I do think it will collapse eventually. When it comes to marriage, stay away from that type.
Are you telling me now that they should break up because he's making more money than he is?
If you look at the rest of the world and throughout history, this has never happened.
There's like 3 women in the world that don't care about.
They're not aware of it yet and they really want what's going on.
Sarah and Max, an unlikely pair in this wild podcast, they're the perfect flair. Sarah's charm, so feminine and free, a Cali girl spirit under the podcast tree. Max is strong force with a punch in every word. Together they navigate the dating absurd. Don't forget to hit subscribe, join the crew for more laughs and tales just for you. Now back to the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Good for Shidduchim. I am your host, Sarah Levine. I have my co-host with me, Max Landisman. Even though we're countries apart, it doesn't matter. We put this together for you guys.
That's right. All in the name of Shidduchim.
All in the name of Shidduchim.
That's right.
Today, we have a very special guest. We're very excited to introduce him. But before we do, we just have a little word from our sponsor, Gamzuli. So this episode is sponsored by Gamzuli. It's a new approach for observant Jews to date. They know that dating can be hard and frustrating. Not all dating websites are user-friendly, and some have generic profile questions. Gamzuli is a new approach for a different online dating experience, and here's why. Their questionnaire asks who you are specifically and what you are looking for, and rather than using labels, it asks about your values, using innovative technology to match you up with those that are most appropriate. Also, the first meeting is a 15-minute video chat on the platform, making it easier just to meet someone. It's open to all hashkafic backgrounds and all different ages, again, letting you dictate your preferences. They have users across 20 different countries and have been successful in creating matches worldwide. So I highly recommend you guys sign up and create your profile at gamzuli.com, spelled GAMZULI.com, where tradition meets technology.
Well done, Sarah.
Thank you. But without further ado, we really wanted to introduce you guys to Daniel Graham. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you for having me, yes.
Yes, we really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to talk to us a little bit about your opinion on a topic we had discussed on a previous episode. Daniel reached out to us, and he had a very interesting take. So Max kind of spoke with him and wanted to kind of dive into his take on gender roles and shidduchim itself. So we thought what he had to say was very interesting, so we wanted to bring Daniel on. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It goes to show you that, with an email, it was really well written and everything. And it goes to show you with just a simple email, you can even be a podcast guest.
So, there you go. So
yeah.
I recommend everybody send emails, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Sarah, do you know how Daniel found us?
No, how did you find us?
Yeah, Daniel, why don't you share that with everyone?
In general, I listen to all different types of podcasts, all different topics. And I think it was during the whole, college protests going on in the U.S., the Columbia, whatever, and so I was looking for, different opinions on this matter. So I think I looked up Jewish podcasts, and then I was scrolling down, and this came up, and it's an interesting topic, anyways. I've been interested in, so I've been listening I've listened to a few episodes, and yeah, you have a very interesting take, so that's why.
Oh,
we
it's so
appreciate
nice
it,
to know that our podcast is getting out there. That's nice.
It's actually, I've noticed the impressions, which means the amount of times that it comes up has literally almost doubled this past week. Usually we'll get, I don't know, like 400 impressions a day or whatever it is. The other day was like 750, whatever it is. So it's really picking up. So that's good to hear. But besides for that, let's dive right into this, Sarah.
Yeah, sure. So Daniel, did you want to just kind of summarize your email that you sent us and kind of highlight your points throughout that email?
Yes, so I guess just in general, in the dating world, there's a expectation on the man to uphold his gender roles. So I would say even very liberal women would expect the man to pay for the dates and to pick them up and to be chivalrous. And it seems to be that on the on the opposite side, for the woman, there's less of that expectation to uphold to that gender role. So I was just interested in hearing. I guess when I reached out, I was interested in hear what you guys had to say on that. Like, why is that? I guess this happening? Why is this expectation still upheld upon the men and less upon women? And I think also through that, one can realize what really they're looking for. If once dwells into that topic and they start thinking to themselves why they really do want the man to be chivalrous, why they want him to pay for the date, even though, as I say, they can be very, very liberal. And and I think it's just once you start asking yourself that question, you can start realizing yourself what you want to look for when you're dating. So, and I think that's very crucial when you're dating to really think about what you really want from going out with each other. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think you also had mentioned that gender roles in marriage as well. Did you want to just elaborate a little bit more on that too?
Yeah, sure. So I guess no. So I think if one would be thinking about why the woman wants the guy to pay for the date, right? So, and why she wants him to pick him on the car, because I think it shows that she really wants a guy who's going to be the protector and the provider. And I think, and therefore, also that would apply to marriage. She, I think, would prefer the guy to therefore be the one who's making the more money in the marriage itself, so that when she has, I think it's to do with the fact when she has a baby, she wants the husband to provide for her when she's going through that stage of her life of being pregnant and having a young baby that she wants to look after, and it's coming from, I think, just it's part of I guess the way we were made is that the woman, when she has a baby, she kicks into like the more caretaker role for the baby, and the man, his like sort of natural response is to come into the more caregiving, to take care of the wife and the child. So that projects itself one on the other. So what's the reason women really want the guy to be making more money? I guess I would say a few things. And usually, again, it's a preference, and it's always obviously not always the case, but in general, I would say the woman wants the guy to be preferably making more money, to be, probably smarter or as smart as her, to be more successful, to be taller, stronger, and it's all coming from this what they really want when they get married, and vice versa. Also, I think that the man in general, I think and the reason I also brought this up also in the email is that you discussed in one of the emails about a guy looking for a woman. You spoke about a guy looking for a woman who's making less than them. If there's an issue in that, you discussed that, and I was making also the point that I think it makes sense that the man would want a woman who's making less than him, because in order that he can fill that role in the marriage. So yeah.
By the way, it's so funny that when you mentioned, a woman's looking for a guy who's taller, stronger, I literally think there's like 3 women in the world that don't care about someone who's taller. Like, that is the biggest, I think, turn on for a girl is someone who's taller. I mean, Sarah, would you agree?
You can't go by me because I dated men shorter than me.
So you're one of the 3.
I really didn't care about height, I can't answer that question.
Sarah's different. Sarah's definitely different.
I would say even if women would date guys that are shorter, I still think they would prefer it. Meaning, if you had equal guys who were both making the same amount of money, everything was the same about them, but one was taller than the other one, they would take the one who was taller. And the man just would want the girl who's shorter, or he just wouldn't care. But again, we would see that difference. I think even if women wouldn't mind dating guys which are shorter, it still would be, I think, a preference in general.
Right.
That would be my take on that.
Sarah, would you have a preference for taller?
I mean, it's hard to say because my husband is taller than me. But, I mean, I didn't choose Shlomi because of his height.
Right.
Like, before him, I was dating somebody who was a little shorter than me.
Right.
Like, I'm 5'6", and he was for sure 5'4".
Right.
But, I mean, I didn't even see Shlomi before I even went out with him.
Right.
So I wouldn't say, like, whatever I'm attracted to, that's what I'm attracted to. I'm not going to go just based off of height alone.
Right.
But, I mean, that's just...
Right. All right. Right. Gotcha. Okay, fine. So I won't push
so
on that.
Daniel, I just okay. But Daniel, so just so I understand, I just wanted to make sure. There's a gender role that's being upheld for men. You know, like the classic pay for the date, chivalrous, opening the door, picking up the girl, being more of the provider, being more of like the quote unquote like man of the relationship. But you also see the women today, they also want to go out, they want to make their money, they want to be independent. But it's not changing within the dating world, meaning that girls still want a man to be chivalrous in like the generic type of chivalry, I guess. Is that what you're saying? And then because the men have this gender role that they need to uphold and are still like the standard is still the same for men, the women aren't even shifting it.
Yeah, and I think it's not fair. I just think that it should come one with the other. Meaning, if a woman wants to be this liberal woman, she wants to have, be powerful, she wants to be a career woman, all these things. So I think it should only be fair then to pay for half the date, or to consider picking up the man and to open the door for the man. I mean, I guess 50-50. If they want the marriage to be 50-50, which a lot of them claim they want 50-50 in the actual marriage,
right? Yeah.
Then they should also do that when they're dating. It shouldn't come. You can't expect the man to be all this take on his full duty as a masculine type and not at the same time be feminine. I just don't think it's fair. I think it should be either 50-50 the whole way from the first date. And a marriage, I don't think it would work out. But if we would go with that, and if they want the man to, and if it would be the opposite, if they do want the man to be chivalrous and they want him to be, make more toward all these things, then they should also expect to take on their gender roles, which is to be, I guess, to be a bit more. I guess it's a controversial word, but just the idea of it, which is a bit more submissive and to take on the role of the house. And to, be able to be willing or to looking forward to or expecting to be the one who's, I guess, cooking and cleaning and raising the kids, Mm-hmm. So I just think they should come together. I don't think it should be fair that they should expect the man to do one thing and not the woman.
Right.
So let me just ask you though, I feel like there is a change in the dating community, like especially amongst I would say more of the modern side, that women do actually do 50-50. Women do plan the dates. Women do pay for it. They may even go out of their way to pick up whoever they're dating. I feel like that is actually kind of a change in the dating world, and I'm just wondering, you haven't observed it yourself, or you don't think it's as magnified as it should be?
Maybe I'm not. You're saying, okay, if that's the case, then fine. I just I have heard, I guess, from other podcasts and such, where they've interviewed very, very liberal women in California, like much more than the modern Orthodox. So just doing extreme liberal. And when the guy on that podcast, he would ask women by one, he'd ask them, who do you want to pay on the first date?
Right.
Nearly without exception, they would say the guy.
Right.
So I can't imagine that the modern Orthodox has become more liberal than the ultra-liberal of California. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's why I made that observation. But maybe I'm missing something here. So that's what.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, like the dates that I've gone on, nobody wanted to pay for anything. I don't know.
I just feel like the change has to start somewhere. Maybe. I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's fair for a woman who says, I'm 100% independent. I don't need a man. But I do want to go out with one. And I want him the whole package, but I don't have to live up to the gender role expectations myself. I mean, I don't think that's fair. But I feel like it is more of a new gender role women are taking on now, and just because you want a man to pay for the first date, or just because that podcast, or that person that was on the podcast had said that, I don't think it's still so crazy to think that she still wants more of the power control in the relationship. You know, like, just because she wants him to pay for the first date doesn't mean that she's not going to pay for the second, third, and fourth date. It doesn't mean that she's not going to pick him up on whatever date, or, you know, plan out every date thoughtfully, or buy him gifts. I think just basing it off of the person who pays for the first date, I don't know if that's enough of a basis for me to accept that, you know?
Yeah, no, so listen, I do hear what you're saying, but I think that's just like the basic way of showing it. It wasn't even the guy's opinion. I was saying this guy, he interviews twice a week about 10 liberal women each time, so it's like 20 women per week, yeah? So it really does show you what women are looking for. But I think even if women sometimes do pay for other dates, I think they still would prefer the man to pay for all dates if they had a choice. They feel it's like, I mean, I know if you've ever seen all these TikToks where these liberal women come on and saying they just got their, you know, they were all liberal, and then the guy paid for the date and they felt like they're all femininity coming out and they felt good about it, and then, you know, I think women today are in denial about, and also men, they're in denial what they really want. You know, I think that the way Hashem made us is this is what we want, really, and we're just denying it. We're preventing us being real about what we want. You know, I mean, there are questions one has to ask themselves. I think, for example, for women who want to be career-oriented and want to be like, you know, not about like careers that could be sorted out, but I'm talking about like careers where you're going to be the whole day in the office from 8 to 5, yeah? I think a woman should ask herself, does she want her kids to be raised by somebody else? Is that what she really wants? Does she want her kids to be raised in daycare till 4 or 5 o'clock and see her kid for an hour? Is that why she brought the kid in the world, to never see them, not grow them up? Does she really want that? And I don't think women would say yes. I think women, given if they would really deeply look into themselves, they would prefer to raise the kids. I think that's what they want, and that's what I'm saying. It goes back to the dating. Is that the reason why? Again, they want the guy to pay. I think it's based off that they really want to be provided for when they do have the baby. And I think just a wise quote I once heard a woman talking to other women was that a woman should have a career around her family rather than a family around her career. Which today women are pushed to focus on career, and then they don't think about will it fit into their family, because that's their priority. It was being taught or pushed on them for that to be their correct priority.
Right.
Rather than vice versa, that the main thing they want is their family, and they should focus their career around the family. So they can make differences, right? What sort of career choices they make.
Right.
Maybe they should have a career which will allow them to stop while they have the baby till the kid is a few years old, and then they can go back to the career. But if you're just focusing the whole time career, I think they're gonna miss out, because they're gonna have the baby and they don't know what to do, you know. Yeah. So I think they're just not real with themselves. And I think the same thing with men is that they're not aware about what sort of woman they're looking for, and therefore they don't mind taking high paid career, powerful women, and they actually get married. They realize that their wife is not doing things that they were used to. Maybe they were used to having their mother, you know, be the one who was cooking in the house and stuff, and suddenly they're shocked by seeing that the wife doesn't have time, which is understandable, yeah? If a woman is the whole time out working the career, she obviously is not going to have the same amount of time to take care of the household. So men, I don't think that want that either. It's both. It's just like I think it's the whole liberal democracy, which is what's pushed it onto us for the past 40 years. I do think it will collapse eventually, and it will go back to normal gender roles. I just think we're going through, because if you look at the rest of the world and throughout history, this has never happened. And I just think it will just go back eventually once that idea dies down and the failures surrounding it. So, yeah.
I have an interesting take on this, just to maybe broaden horizons a little bit. I think that from a woman's perspective, that I don't need a man to make me, or I don't need a this or that or whatever. A lot of, I would say, the more liberal way of thinking, such as boss babe and that kind of thing. Again, I'm not saying whether good or bad, but I think it can stem from potentially a woman who had a very negative relationship with a man, or somebody got screwed over of some sort, and therefore now they take a stance of, well, I'm not going to let this happen to me. I think that has something to do with the whole movement I would say. Like,
so you're saying like a past trauma?
Trauma.
There's a past trauma?
I think so.
I think you're right. I think that a lot of times that is the case, and I've heard women who have come on different podcasts and stuff where they've mentioned this, that their mother was either divorced or had a very bad relationship with a man, and therefore the woman, their mothers were like trying, even if their daughters would want to, let's say, be homemakers or whatever, they would like, try and put them down and say you can't survive off a man, like you're saying, because of prior trauma. It could be because of this prior trauma, it's affected even women, meaning they're the ones who have made the voices heard, they were the big voices, the ones who had trauma, and they projected it to all the women out there, and they, and I think they've had their influence. It could be what you're saying. I don't know if all women have gone through trauma that think like this, but I just think that they were influenced probably by other women who had that trauma, so I would probably agree with you.
Right, like there are instances, unfortunately, that women get married. They weren't necessarily prepared to work on their own. They married, unfortunately, a deadbeat husband, didn't provide anything and whatever, and now they find themselves screwed. They find themselves stuck in a really bad situation. And there are stories where these women went out and started their own businesses, became very successful, and became so-called, empowering women, that kind of thing, and not taking away from that, but I think it does stem from something like that. Where I'm coming from in this, in general, is I do think like family should be the core, not just for the woman, but a guy. I mean, like I'm a single guy, so I don't know what it's like to have kids. I make the joke, I don't know where my kids are, but that's just a joke. But I think the beauty of life for anyone, whether it's a woman or a guy, is to have kids. I don't know. I take it from Jerry Seinfeld. I'm a big Jerry Seinfeld fan. And he was single for a very long time. But even he talks about how if I knew how enjoyable it was to have kids, I would have had kids a long time ago. So just interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, and what you said at the beginning is that in terms of marrying douchebags, whatever, I agree. I think that's why it's very important during the shidduch stage that one should really focus on, can this guy be, don't just go based off attraction and the fun of it. I think when we'd spoken that you mentioned that sometimes a guy could be very attracted to girls which have like all these careers and stuff. And I think I was thinking about it more a bit, and it could be it's coming from the fact that women with careers are much more, fun to be with, I would say. There's like a fun of it because they have a lot to what to say, they can be very intelligent. But I think practically when you get married, it doesn't work out so well. Even though the reason why guys like it is because it's fun, but fun is not practical always. So I think, and also the same thing I would say about, women should look for guys not just because it's fun and they're interesting, and let's say a guy could be going to all these sort of careers which are like very unlikely to get any, musicians or artists. Like usually it's very hard to be successful in these type of careers, and it could be very interesting when the woman goes out with them, right? Because they're a lot of fun and they could be spontaneous and dangerous, whatever, and the girls fall for these guys, and then they get married and they're just married to these bums, like they just, So I would say when a girl also is going on shidduchim, she should also make sure she's finding a guy who's going to be active in making sure he provides for his family, and to avoid this, because it is a big problem. And I think the biggest issue about relying on for women to rely on men is because there are bums out there and they can, just run away and do all sorts of stupid things. So they have to be, during the shidduch process, they have to first be aware of what they really want, and really actively search for a guy who's going to be a provider and will take on his role properly, So that's what I would say for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you on a couple questions. Well, the first question I wanted to ask is, my sister, she's Haredi, and she supported my brother-in-law for about, I would say, maybe 5 to 10 years when they were in Kollel. And they didn't have any family support. There was no money coming in really from either side. Maybe a little here and there, not enough at all to help, not enough for her to be at home. So a lot of these women are in my sister's, she's like one of thousands of women that had to work. And she made herself a very, very solid career. She is kind of she's like one of the head of the divisions of where she works now. So she herself had to be out of the house not that she wanted to be, but it was because she had to be. And she wanted her family to thrive. She wanted her husband to thrive in Kollel and work and whatever he needed to do to learn. She was more than devoted to do that. And I mean, it's just hard for me I understand where you're coming from, but like in the ideal world where there's utopia, yes. And like in today's economy, you have to have two people working. I mean, my husband and I, we both need to work in order for us to live, to survive, to get a home, to build a home. There's no option for us. There's no option for me to stay at home and raise the kids and be at home and not have a nanny. Like, that's, in my idea, that's ideal. But I mean, we have to be back on reality. And financial is reality, and it's real. Right. And you both in a relationship, you both want to succeed, you both want to thrive, and that comes with the foundation of how are you going to do that, right? So
right.
I understand what you're saying. When you're dating, and let's say you're dating, you're in the modern Orthodox Machmir, or let's say you're more in the Kollel, to the right Kollel, yeshivish crowd, right?
Right.
You have to get into, okay, how are we going to support ourselves? How are we going to, if you want to learn in Kollel and my parents don't have money, your parents don't have money. So I just wanted to hear your take on that side of the angle,
Yeah, so it's two different inyanim, two different matters, which you mentioned, because there's the Kollel lifestyle, which I'm very much aware of, because I actually live in a Haredi neighborhood, Eretz Yisrael, and also I wasn't Kollel myself, so I'm very aware of what goes on with that. And I think you mentioned also the other topic, which was just in general, nothing to do with, let's say, Haredi or yeshivish. It's just the idea of can you manage with just one income instead of two. I think that's two different subjects. So I'll try and talk about both. First of all, what you said about your sister, which she's a husband who's committed to learning. So I wouldn't say. I think you did say that. Use the lashon, the wording of that she had to. I don't think that she has to. Meaning, if a guy's in Kollel, that's a choice. That's the guy forced. I know guys which, unfortunately, in yeshiva and Kollel, which they sort of manipulate their wives to stay to get good jobs in order they can stay in Kollel. But again, it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be a choice. Meaning, it's according to the Ksuva, the guy is the one who has to support the wife. There's no way out of that. Meaning, the man is his role in the marriage. Yeah, it's actually a signed contract, and he has no way of avoiding that. He has to be the one. It doesn't make a difference how much he wants to learn. He has to be the one providing for his wife, and she doesn't have to work. I mean, maybe she has to do a little bit from home, but he has to be the one who has to provide for her. So it's and in no way is it forced upon your sister that she has to work. You could say is that because she wants a guy in Kollel, there's just, I guess, the consequence of that. But I would say to that, so it depends. If a woman, I think it's very difficult to do both. If a woman is also, I mean, we're talking about Kollel lifestyle, so an ideal lifestyle. If a woman's able to also take care of the house and also work, and the guy is able to learn and resolve that, then great. But unfortunately, that's not the case a lot of the time, and I'm very aware of this because I see it the whole time in Eretz Yisrael with Avrechim. Is that what happens is that if the woman is working, that she can't take care of the house, which is understandable. It's very difficult to do both. And just slowly, all the household duty falls on the husband. And he ends up being the housewife. He is if you would see it in Eretz Yisrael very, very often, the one who's raising the kids and the one who is taking care of the household is the man. And so what's the point of that? If the whole reason she is working is so he can learn and he ends up not learning, so you might as well go just back to the traditional gender roles. So again, and you see that from the Gdolim themselves. If they're trying to, follow the Gdolim, what they did. If you look at the Gdolim, all the Gdolim, their wives didn't work because it was understandable that it's nearly impossible to do both, right? It was very rare, even in the history of Klal Yisrael, amongst Gdolim, that the wife would also work because it was impossible to do both. And what you would see was, even amongst the big Rabbanim, they themselves would take on positions within Torah in order to finance their family. It never was that they put the financial burden on the wives. It's a completely new thing, and I think it's like, in my opinion, it's feminism hidden in, and they're not aware of it yet in the Haredi world, what's going on. That's in reference to the yeshivish Haredi aspect. And then in what you said about, I think, which is the two incomes, today it's very hard to do that. So I do have something to say about that as well. So basically, when a woman's working, you have much more expenses as well. So you have to now pay for much more for foods. You have to often buy 2 cars. There's an aspect of a lot more expenses. She has to buy, I guess, more clothes for work. There is a lot more expenses which come with the woman working. So it's not necessarily that you're going to be safe. And also daycare as well. I heard in the U.S. the daycare is a fortune. So I think there was somebody who did the calculation. Right. When somebody did the calculation, the amount of money you pay. Yeah. What's that?
There's public services, but I guess if you don't choose that, then yes. It could be expensive.
Right. It's a bit easier because the government comes in. But again, I did hear that in the U.S. daycare is a fortune. So the amount of money you're paying for that, you're just about maybe on top of that another few $1,000s on top of the daycare costs with all the taxes and everything. I heard a whole calculation about it. You're not even making necessarily a bit. You're making a bit more. Okay, so that's in terms of the expense and everything. That. The second point I've got to make about that is if the woman is working, the man can't do extra hours. And usually the most successful men, all the big billionaires and multimillionaires, they did more than what's normal, meaning the regular 9 to 5. To be a successful businessman, you have to work extra hours. You have to reach out to, there's all sorts of different extra things which come to making your business, being successful in a business. And it's impossible to do that if your wife's working, because it means you have to you have to do a lot of household duties. You have to help to put the kids to sleep, whatever it is, and it's impossible to be successful. So I'm saying, even with that, I would say it doesn't even work. If you just look at all the successful people out there, all the billionaires and multimillionaires, their wives were at home. And I know this also from my grandfather. He was a very successful businessman at one time, and his wife was at home, and because he was able to work 12 hours a day, and he was able to work late nights to make sure he got his business right, and he built a very big, successful business. So I'm saying is that for many, many reasons, I don't think it's a necessity, and I think it's actually a person being even more successful if the wife doesn't have to work. And I actually also mentioned the bitachon part as well, is that in terms of bitachon, the bitachon, what does Hashem really want from us? Meaning Hashem is the one who provides us with the money, and we just have to do a shtadlus to get that money. It's like a key to that money that Hashem would decide on Rosh Hashanah. So who does the shtadlus fall on? And we see from Chazal, we see, also from history, the shtadlus fell on the man, not on the woman. So as long as the man does the hishtadlus, you get the money. I don't think there's an extra. You have to now do a hishtadlus with the woman working because that was not expected of the woman, and it's not part of the ksuva. So that's what I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is your take though? So what do you advise people who are in having a little bit more of a hard time or more of a challenge with dating for men and for women? What would your advice be for them? For a man, and then for a woman?
So again, you have to for sure be aware of what you really want from life. You have to really look at yourself 10 years from now, what you want to be doing. So, for example, for a woman, what's a guy in learning, for example, right? A woman has to ask herself, does she really, really want that lifestyle? Meaning, is she ready to make those massive sacrifices, which was intended for that sort of, I guess, lifestyle, which is basically, are they willing to not go out to eat anymore? Are they willing to live in a tiny apartment with, there's the basics? If yes, so kol hakavod. But I don't think, I think sometimes we're so brainwashed from seminaries or yeshivas, whatever, we're not necessarily want that lifestyle. So we have to really, I think women have to ask themselves if they want that, if they were looking for a guy who's in learning, do they really want that? And to be honest with themselves. And I said, also, as I was saying earlier, they have to ask themselves, do they really want to be a career woman and not have the guy supporting them, and not raise their kids? Do they want that? That's just, I don't think it's very rare for a woman to ask herself when she's going to college or something. It's very rare for a woman to ask herself that question. Where does she see sometimes from 10 years from now? And then I think it would make a huge difference to the guy she's searching for, because you can literally tell. Again, so you're not looking out for the fun guy anymore, necessarily the most attractive guy, whatever it is you were looking for. You're looking for the guy who's going to provide for you, and going to be a capable man, not like a bum, you know. And there's different ways of seeing that. I can tell you is that so let's say you're looking, even if a girl's looking for a guy who's learning, right? You have to make sure he's not just saying he's learning, he's actually learning.
Right.
So I would suggest that actually the father should actually even go to the yeshiva and see if he's waking up on time. That's like a very good indication for the guy. If a woman marries a guy who's waking up later than her, imagine she's waking up at about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to go to work. And he's getting up at 9:30, going to shtiebel, whatever it is, and getting to call at 10. It's just going to be a disaster, you know? It's like, she's going to go crazy from that. And understandably, I would go crazy from it. So I would suggest to all the women who are looking for guys in learning, that they should send their fathers or brothers and actually check and see if he's coming, at least waking up on time, at the very least, and actually serious. Because I think you've mentioned this as well from resumes. These resumes can say this guy is the starkest guy, and I think you mentioned that the biggest liars are the Rosh Hashivas. I think in one other podcast you mentioned that sometimes they want to lie to most of the Rosh Hashivas. Yeah, so I think you can't indicate necessarily anything from the resume in terms of how serious this guy is, you know? You have to really go to the yeshiva itself, check him out. You know, this is the guy that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. It's worth this extra effort, and to go to the guy's yeshiva and see if he's waking up on time, you know? And even if he's not in yeshiva, just make sure he's actually, he's a capable person.
Right.
So that's what I'd recommend in terms of the woman. And in terms of the guy, I would recommend the guy looks for a girl who is making less than him, making sure that she is going to be, she's in the type of job she could take care of her family. As I said, there's other issues as well. If a woman's in a career, he's going to, I think, not like it that she's going to be very career focused, not focused on him. When he comes back from work, she's not going to be available. All these things, and it's going to drive him insane. And they're not aware of it because they just think, oh, the woman's making a lot of money. It's amazing, you know. I can buy fancy cars or houses. When they actually get married, they find out that it's driving them crazy that the woman is all the time focused on her career and not him. And you know, it's just so. As I said, I would suggest literally a guy to look for a woman who's family oriented, in the type of job where she could stop her career, put her career on hold, or she could do it around the family. She could do it like a type of thing from home for 2-3 hours, and she could still focus on the family and the house. But not look. I would say stay away. I'm going to offend a lot of people by this, but stay away from lawyer women. Stay away from doctor women. These women are working late at night with men. The guy's going to go crazy from the fact that with other men in the office they're chatting with. I think that would be a disaster. So stay away from those women and look for women which are, as I said, family-oriented careers, which they can work their life, their family around the career rather than vice versa. They should be looking to make their career around their family rather than the family around the career.
Yeah, I totally hear that. By the way, I've had some of the worst experiences with lawyers. I actually told my Rav, who's actually also a lawyer, I told him about it. He's like, you cannot go out with a lawyer anymore. But anyways,
yeah, for sure.
I think that's more of a personality thing.
I think it's personality, yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you saying your opinion on it.
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah, no problem.
I do know some people. Like I even have a cousin who was a very high I don't know, profile or high powered lawyer or whatever. The second she had kids, work from home, everything revolved around the family now. So I want to get your take on that, such as there are women who, I do know the women, they have pretty high powered jobs, but they really do want a family. It's just that because they don't have a family, they work so hard because, like, why not? The second they would have a family, I definitely know they throw all that out to be with the family. So your take is, yes, like to have a job originally that you're able to spend time with family. The way I look at it is, until you're married, what difference does it make about what the job is per se? You could always just step aside, or et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, I think it's a question to ask the woman herself. I don't think she's asked that question of herself. So I think the guy for sure should ask her.
Definitely.
I think our careers, which is very difficult to do that. That's all.
Yeah.
I agree with you. What Toshi gets married, that it's something to do. But I do think that it actually causes the woman to push off marriage. And I've heard women say this: is that they were very focused on making sure they got their degree, and it's a lot of work, and you go into debt, and all these things.
Yeah, sure.
And you don't even use it in the end, because if you're saying if you're going to run a family, and you said you got whoever it was that left it a bit, and then she spent so much money on her education and so much time, and it's really for nothing in the end. Especially if you're going to have a lot of kids, right? If you're planning on having a lot of kids, we're talking about pushing it off for like 20 years, you know. So that means it was basically a waste of money and time for the most part, you know.
I think all the degrees are a waste of money and time.
She's a superwoman. What's that?
I was saying I'm not the biggest guy on degree, even though I do have an MBA. I despise school and college. I think it's all scam. Because a lot of kids today, they come out without any skills, and they spent $250,000.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So I'm saying it's even worse, I think, for women, where they probably, as I'm saying, like you said, they would probably want to take off time for a career. But again, if they're going to have a lot of kids, so not only that, if they're a career woman, it might stop them from having more kids than they really wanted because of the pressures involved in that career.
Yeah.
It might push off marriage. They would rather have got married earlier. They'd rather have got married very young. And they even regret it when they get older, they can get married younger. And it just because, again, the whole focus was about this career or whatever they were trying to do, has pushed them off, and they're pushed into this idea of being independent.
Yeah.
So they're not even aware that they're just pushing off marriage, and then sometimes they don't even get married, and they regret it because they were trying to focus on being independent, you know?
Yeah.
Rather than just getting married young, I think, which would have been probably more ideal for a lot of women, especially probably in the film community. Would be ideal to get married younger, and I think it's a mistake. Now you could be, you know, as I said, you can find maybe a woman who's really has gone through it, and she's aware of maybe the mistakes she made, or she doesn't think through it, and you've now pointed it out, and now she's willing to take off that time when she does have kids. But again, it's a big risk, you know. So I still say it's preferable to find a woman who's doing more of a sort of a family-oriented job where she could push off her career, or she could work from home, one or the other, you know. So
yeah. By the way, that's my favorite term on a resume: family-oriented. Whether they actually are family-oriented or not family-oriented, they're still going to write family-oriented.
Right. This is actually a way of digging into that. You know, this is the way to see if they're family-oriented. To ask them this question. You know, if the guy asks us some question, what do you plan on doing when we have kids? Do you plan on raising those kids, or do you plan on giving them to daycare, or to expect me to take care of them? You know, if the guy wants to be, does the guy want to be the one who's taking care of the kids? I don't think so. You know, so I think the guy should ask that question to the girl, and you'll see if it really is true or not. You know.
Right.
So,
yeah, totally. I was watching what's his name? Michael Francis. Do you guys know who Michael Francis is?
No.
I don't expect you guys to, but he was a former mob boss. Real old school Italian guy, whatever. He's 72 years old now, but for those of you who are unaware of how like those old school mafia guys are, you know, say what you want about them, but they were actually very family oriented, believe it or not. Like they did not want their wives to work. They wanted to provide for everything. And so he was having a discussion with his daughters on a podcast. And when they asked him about, you know, the guy that they're dating, for him, he doesn't even want, like if the boyfriend is sick, he doesn't even want his daughter to go bring him chicken soup, because he's like, screw that. The guy should take care of himself, get off his behind, and go take care of her. Like that, I just thought it was so funny. But
Isn't that the whole point of them?
I don't know, it's an extreme case, but like I don't know. I just thought it was very funny. Sorry, what was that, sir?
Yeah, no,
the whole point of being a mob boss is like taking care of the family.
Yeah, they take care of everybody. Oh, yeah.
Sure. He wants to take care of the family. So he'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about taking care of yourself.
It was just so funny. He wouldn't even want his he's like, he hasn't proven himself yet. Until you know he's a legit guy and, you know, he actually does care about you and the family, whatever, then you can go help him out when he's sick. But until then, get off his behind and go to work. I just thought that was great.
That's funny.
I tell you, I think also in the very conservative amongst some very conservative Americans, they actually, I heard also another podcast where there are these very conservative women, they're very Christian, and they said their fathers wouldn't let them date guys unless they were already living in their own apartment. So yeah, I think that these are actually good ways of testing guys out to see if they're going to be on top of themselves.
Yeah. Well, this is all I think has,
Right.
I've said this before that, especially especially in the Jewish community, when you're dating generally people are starting pretty young, right? So let's say the guy is 23 years old. I mean, the guy at 23, you're not going to be pulling in $250,000 a year yet, unless you have a trust fund, which statistically there's like 3 people out there that fit the criteria of 6'5", blue eyes, and trust fund. There's a song about that. But I want to get your take on this. But in my opinion, whether it's nothing to do with job title or anything, but you should be looking for a winner. And what I mean by winner is, it doesn't necessarily mean what job title he has, but when you look at the guy, you're like, I don't know what this guy's going to do, but I just know he's going to win at life. Like, my dad was a financial advisor, so I know a lot of behind the scenes stories of people who made a lot of money, but they don't know how to do anything with, like a doctor, for example. He was making, who the hell knows, I don't know, between $300,000 and $500,000 a year. But every 12 minutes would call my dad. I need another $40,000 to pay this guy. I need this and that. And he just wouldn't let my dad manage his money properly. But my dad had a couple who, between them both, probably made $15,000 a year. They were custodians, had more money than the doctor. So
Right.
I don't know. What's your take on that? Because I feel like women, not all women, but a lot of women, they just look at job title. I just feel like they're not looking at the right thing. I don't know. It's more about the person.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I think you actually did mention this in a different podcast also, when you mentioned, I think, that you came to some sort of like date scene, and there was a guy there was a doctor, and all the women straight away went to him.
Yeah, it was a dentist,
You
actually.
mentioned
Dentist, yeah.
Yeah, dentist, yeah. So I'll tell you, I'll tell you where they're coming from, why they look at this guy as more wealthy, because the guy is spending money on very maybe the girl wants fancy cars and fancy house. So maybe even though he's in debt, right? So it's not actual wealth in terms of money. In terms of living a luxury lifestyle, they're living that lifestyle. So I'm just saying that's why could be where they're coming from, why they want a doctor or a dentist, whatever. Because again, even if they're in debt, they're guaranteed a lifestyle where they can have fancy cars, fancy clothes, and just not, running their money properly. So that's where they're coming from. And the guy who's making $15,000, even though he has money in the bank, but still he doesn't have that luxury lifestyle, right? Which I think is better. But some women grew up with a lot of, a certain lifestyle, and they want to continue that. So that's why I would say they're coming from. And in terms of just looking, I think again, you're looking for a guy who is ambitious, and you could see that. You could see what's he doing throughout his day, and what's he looking to do. Does he have an outlook on life, where he wants to go? And unfortunately, usually when it comes to professions, like I said, is artists and musicians a lot of the time. So they're more risky because it's very hard to make money in these areas. Or acting, I don't know, or there's a lot of different types. Or let's say, you're a type of guy who just wants to help society. So again, that could be good. I'm just saying you just have to realize that you'll be living quite a low lifestyle. So there are ways of checking it. But if you see him just like when he gets to a certain age, he's just playing video games the whole day or at home the whole day, and he's depressed, I would stay away from this man, run away from it.
Right. And I'd even say, even the actors that say, the ones who made it, even when they were acting, they were busting their behind, doing other things to make sure there's money on the table, there's food on the table. I think it's just a characteristic. I think it's just just make sure you provide for your family first, and then, still definitely go after the dream, but family's number one.
Yeah. Again, you're right. There are ones which are successful, but I remember recently heard an interview where they interviewed a guy he's actually a Balchuva, and he was a Disney artist. But he said himself that just to be a Disney artist for the cartoons, that they make or movies, Disney would only accept from 4 specific universities, and from he went to one of these universities, and from that university they only selected 4 out of hundreds which were applying. Yeah?
Right.
So it's just extreme risk. It's like, I'm just saying, like you just mentioned, is that the guy has to first focusing on making a career that actually make money that he can provide for his family. And then, you know, if he gets older, you know, or he has spare time, he can, you know, do his hobbies or ambitions. But I mean, I'm saying it's risky. I do know that a new guy who is saying he wants to be a inspiring rap artist.
Rap artist?
so
Jewish
yeah,
guy?
rap artist. So what's that?
Jewish guy?
Yeah, he's Jewish. Well, he went off the derech and he's by himself in Eretz Yisrael now, and he's an inspiring rap artist, you know.
Okay. All right.
So he's, I would call him high risk. Like, he does get goals because he's fun, you know. He's like spontaneous, and he has like he does dangerous things, you know. So there's a fun aspect to him. But I would say when it comes to marriage, like, you know, stay away from that type, just because it's not it's the chances of making money in that type of career is one in probably in a million, you know.
Bro, I hear
So
you.
yeah, I would just that's, you know, it's one way of being suspect.
Thank you so much for, you know, vocalizing how your thoughts, your opinions, and how you feel about, you know, shidduchim, gender roles in general. I think there's a lot here. I think there's a lot to think about, and I'm curious to hear, you know, what our viewers and what our listeners have to say. You know.
I do hope. I think I read this also in the email. I do hope, anyways, even after this, you maybe one time you just discuss it, just to hear after when we just spoke about what you both have to say about it, because I'd be just like, as I said, I like hearing different perspectives, different ways of looking at things. So it'd be amazing to also hear you both discuss it as well, and just you know, myself rethink things.
Should we get a feminist on here as well?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That'd be
So,
an explosion.
that'd be fun. That'd be fun for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Any feminists out there, email us. We would love to hear your take, and you know, we would love to interview you as well.
Yeah, I may know one or two. We'll see. But I think you'll definitely open up some eyes. You've definitely stretched my way of thinking for sure. And I think you had a lot to bring to the table. I think you know what you say. I think you back it up. I think there's a lot here. And the most important thing I think of this conversation is when you're dating someone, yes, it's great that when you're on the date, it's all nice and fun and whatever. But when you actually envision a life together, really think about it. And you can even ask your partner or a potential partner, you know, certain questions such as, like, if we have a kid, like, are you still going to be CEO or what's, you know, things of that nature? Because I think it's extremely important. I think it was great that you touched upon that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Well, we wanted to thank Daniel so much for coming on the podcast and being brave enough to know to say your opinion.
All right, thank you for having me.
Wow. Okay, so I feel like there's a lot of feelings and like a lot of emotions, a lot of things that, you know, we can unpack there.
A lot to digest, for sure.
A lot to digest. I will say, first and foremost, you know, everybody is entitled to their own opinion. Everybody is allowed to feel how they want to feel. And everybody has their certain views on what is a successful relationship, what's a successful marriage. However, I just don't feel that it's right to generalize it and pinpoint on one specific thing in terms of dynamics, meaning I don't feel that it's appropriate to say that a man is to be the dominant role, to be the power figure, to have the family kind of revolving around the man, and the woman be more at home, raise the kids. I just don't feel that that's like the end all be all type of relationship. There's so many relationships that are thriving that are either opposite or it's kind of like half and half. And I understand like that's how he feels and how he sees his success in a relationship. But like if you ask any, you know, couple that's in their 50th year anniversary, 60 years, everybody has a different way of having a successful relationship. I don't think every single person is going to have the same answer. I mean, you do have your general answers as in like communication, your love languages, listening, but like there's specific reasons why a marriage itself is successful. And I don't think it's fair to say because of one dynamic.
Right. Are you also saying when you mention it's like, well, it doesn't just have to be dominated by the man. It could be 50-50 or vice versa. Do you mean, like, to clarify, do you mean like the woman is the head of the household where essentially she, I guess, is the breadwinner, or she is the disciplinary as well? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you can have the opposite, right? Like, the woman is able to be pregnant, to have a child, but also if she wants to be a head surgeon or chief of surgery or a CEO of a company, and her husband knew this and they communicated about how their dynamics would be, I don't think that that's a setup for a failed marriage or a marriage that won't work out.
Right.
I mean, if a woman wants to do that, then that's great for her. But this is going back to, seeing yourself in 10 years. So when you're sitting down on a date and you ask the person, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And they say, all I want to do is raise a family. And the guy is thinking, well, I actually want her to be at work as well. Then there's a communication that you guys need to have.
Right.
I don't think it's just one communication. There has to be obviously a set goal within the relationship. And I just don't think, like, honing in on just one type of dynamic is kind of the answer to a successful relationship. And again, like, it goes down to, like, what is success? Like, is success somebody who is a therapist? Is success somebody who makes $5 million? Is success being a teacher, then going into principal? Is success, somebody in a startup? You can't say the guy is successful and makes more money than the woman. What happens if the guy is a junior? I can't remember what I was going to say. Like, a lawyer, and is like a junior lawyer.
Right.
I don't know the correct term for it, but if he's like a junior lawyer, and a woman, his wife, decides to become a nurse practitioner. But when they first got married, she was a nurse. Then she decided to go to school. Then she decided to get an MP. Are you telling me now that they should break up because she's making more money than he is, or because she is in more of a power role than he is, and she wants to have kids and she wants to raise the kids and go to her job? Like, I just don't understand how somebody can say that is just not a successful dynamic to have, because you have that. And I've seen it firsthand. And one of my friends growing up, her dad was at home. He did the laundry, he cooked, he cleaned, he did everything. Her mother was in real estate. She went out, she did the work. And my friend's parents have been married, I think, for almost 46 years.
Really? Wow.
Like, it's hard.
How did the kids turn out?
It's totally fine.
No, I mean, but right, not just that. That sounds really bad, but also, like, they have a connection with they have a good relationship with their parents and all that stuff.
Yeah. It was just like, that's how their dynamics were, and so it's just hard to hear and accept that, like, there's only one successful dynamic.
I hear where you're coming from,
and that's what I'm having, like, a hard time digesting. I understand what he's saying. I respect what he's saying. I don't agree with a lot of the points.
Right. I hear where you're coming from.
What's your take, Matt?
Yeah. As what's it called? As conservative, I don't know if I'm a very in the middle type of guy, because I've always never really was able to fit into any sort of box. So I think whatever works for you. But as a overall dynamic, I hear where he's coming from, where I do think it's important, and it's something I never really discussed on a date. I guess I didn't make it that far. But to really think about, for me, the way I look at it is, I don't really view it as what do you do for work, or, make more money, not make more money, whatever it is. But is your number one, like, are you going to be home? Like, for me, I still think anyone could be a CEO of anywhere and work extremely efficiently and can still be home for their kids. I work in a very different, I view the world a very different way than most people, I think. In my opinion, the higher you go, the less work you should be doing. That's not just me speaking, but Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said that. And I think he's totally right. And I think a lot of people don't really view it that way. And of course, every industry has a different, like if you're a lawyer, you need to be working more hours. That's just the way it is. So it's not necessarily applying to that. I'm sure there are other things, doctor, whatever, you work at nights or however way you want to put it. But I think there's always a way, even if you're a founder of your own company, so on and so forth. I know plenty of people, especially women, who run their own businesses and do really, really well, have plenty of employees, but they make time for their family and they still raise their kids, meaning no one else is raising their kids. They're raising their kids. I think it's very doable. But I do agree with the fact, like, if someone's completely absent, like someone is just, that's all they care about is their career, I just don't really respect that. Someone who's just like all about themselves and they go for their career, they really kind of neglect their kids. I'm not into that at all.
Right, but that would be like a conversation that you guys would communicate about. Like, obviously, if somebody says, I really just want to have the children and I really don't want to raise them myself, I want to pay for somebody to be home all the time. Okay, that's not for you. That's not necessarily to say that it's not for anyone or that it's not healthy. I mean, that's for, if that's how she feels about it, then she'd find a partner that's okay with it.
Right. I mean, his whole point was not necessarily telling anyone one way or another, but that he feels that, that way is the best way, which I mean, ultimately, I think it is a great way to kind of, I can't argue with that, whatever, but if someone, but I wouldn't say necessarily like it's a disaster if a woman wants to go to work or whatever, because, I'm thinking of one person in particular where she does make more money than the husband, and she does work, I believe until like 12 o'clock at night even, but she's always present for her kids. She's a nurse, what do you call it, an NP, a nurse practitioner, whatever it is. She's got interesting hours, but that doesn't mean she's not home for her kids. Yes, she has to go to work, but trust me, she's present a lot, and she's still very much a mother. So I don't see that as a impediment. I do kind of agree. Everyone's different. But I think communication is the key, but I think, again, like the biggest point he's making is I don't think people are really talking about that part. And it is really important because you have to figure that out. Like, if you have a kid, who's going to take care of them? What's going to be the order of operations? Are we both going to work? What's the deal? And I'm glad he pointed it out, because I really don't think people talk about it, because it wasn't on my radar, that's for sure. It's not something I thought about. I'm trying to get to date number 2. I can't get date number 2. I'm talking about kids. But
no.
But I think it's very important.
I don't think you have to talk about it on first or second date, but it is I that's what I was saying. I do agree with him that it is a conversation to have. Obviously, like, how do you see your family life,
Right.
And when you have that communication, when you have that conversation, for a woman who wants to be, making a lot of money, it doesn't matter if she makes more, it doesn't matter if she makes less. It could be different for somebody who's like, I'm a woman who wants to be at home. And those are two different types of conversations, but I'm not saying that one of them is better. That comes down to the partnership and to the relationship itself.
Right. There is one aspect that I don't understand, which is what it actually is like to have kids. And I have heard from someone that I do trust, I believe you would trust his opinion as well, where, it was spoken about as far as, how to raise their kids and should the wife work or not work. And ultimately they chose that, the wife is not working, is going to be home most of the time, because he was talking to me. He's like, even if she worked even if she worked until 4:00, like, you got to run to this store to buy clothes, or you got to, make their bed. I don't know, like stuff like that, whatever you do as a mother. He's like,
but that's a dynamic, right? That's a dynamic that works for them.
Yeah.
And economically, it works for them.
Exactly.
It's not
there are some, right. There are some,
a success.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Like there are some women who, like, being at home would probably be a disaster. Like, they're just not cut out for that. I mean, it's very possible. Right.
Or somebody who's jump-starting a career just doesn't feel like she'd be successful at being at home.
But I do see where he's coming from, and I do think he's right as far as this feminism thing that's creeping into our society, because I see it with my own eyes, like with the girls that I'm dating, and I do see it as an issue. It is definitely an issue where girls just feel like
having a double standard.
There's a double standard, and they feel they just don't need a guy. They don't need a guy, so don't date. You don't need a guy, then don't date anyone.
Right.
Like, I get where a woman, like, if a woman says you don't need a guy to be, I get where they're coming from. It's like more of an empowerment thing, but that also doesn't mean to take it to an extreme and say, like, to think like, for me personally, I feel like I have a ceiling when I'm by myself. If I find that special someone, right, I feel like I'm going to be double as good, going to be way better than anywhere I could be possibly by myself. And so I understand, like someone shouldn't, like, not be happy in their life just because they're single. I get that. But there is this aspect, like, if you do have a spouse, you're going to be 12 times better off. I mean, I think it just stems from the same thing like we spoke about before, which I mentioned. It's an attitude problem, in my opinion. I think it's an attitude issue, not necessarily what one does or whatever. It's just a certain attitude, like coming from a woman's side, and it's like, I'm better than you, so I need to make more money and do this, and I'm so focused on my career. I'm like, listen, all to them. If they want to do that, then go for it. But I'm just not into it. I just think it's ridiculous.
I understand.
It's crazy. It's
I do agree. I do agree that a woman who identifies as very liberal, feministic, like, they do have to understand, like, when they're going into a date or when they're dating, like, okay, what do you want to get out of a partner? What do you want to put into the relationship? But I agree, you can't have it both ways. You can't have a chivalrous man and expect him to be chivalry and expect him to chivalrous and expect him to buy you stuff and pay for stuff, but also at the same time hold back and be like, well, I'm a liberal woman, like, I don't need you.
100%. I thought he brought up a great point.
I do agree with that. But if somebody identifies as feministic, feminine, oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for?
A feminist.
A feminist.
A feminist.
Someone
Yeah.
identifies as a feminist and a liberal. I love that. I support that. But you do have to think about when you're going into a date, or when you do want to date, like, okay, what do I want to get? What can I get out of this? What do I want from a man? What do I want from a partner? What do I want from a potential spouse? And also, you always have to think, what am I going to give back? It's not a one-way, ticket. You got to give, he's got to give. So you can't, I agree, you can't go in being like, he has to respect me and, like, take me out, and, like, it's all about me because I'm a feminist. It doesn't, like, work if it's just a one-way ticket, Like, what are you giving back to the relationship?
Right. I do think there are definitely gender roles. I do think, like a mother can be more motherly, if that makes sense, and the husband can be more like a man. I do think, like, even if someone thinks like they're a feminist and they should be in charge of the household as far as, like, being the man of the house, even though they're not, like, I'm not really into that. That's for sure. Right. I think everyone's got, in my opinion, if everyone can just focus on the other person, meaning care less about themselves and focus on the other person, it would be great. Right. I think that's a recipe for success.
I mean, that's kind of a partnership. That's what everybody tries to strive for.
I think there's a great analogy where let's say you're running a basketball team, right? And someone who's suited to be a center, wants to play point guard when they're not a point guard, if that makes sense.
Right. I understand. It's like, you have a certain role to play, so don't try to
Right, like that doesn't mean you can't
manipulate it into a way that you don't want.
That doesn't mean they can't have career goals. I'm totally into that. But like it's like this attitude like, oh, I'm a woman, so I should be the man of the house. Like, I just think that's stupid.
I understand what you're saying. I definitely understand. I can't say I fully agree, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah, sparked a lot of conversation, sparked a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear what our listeners have to say.
Definitely.
All right, so I feel like we had a lot to unpack there. And yeah, thanks for sharing what you thought about it, Max. And I hope people, I hope people either agree with us, disagree with us.
Whichever, but
conversation.
It definitely got us thinking. So we appreciate Daniel for reaching out to us and for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, guys, until next time, bye.
And remember, everything will always be about shidduchim. Catch you in the next episode.